The Vatican is beautiful, charming, and full of architectural monuments. The smallest sovereign state on earth is increasingly shrouded in controversy every year. The current ruler of the Vatican is Pope Francis. He was the first New World Pope, the first Jesuit Pope, and the first non-European roots Pope in 1200 years, since Gregory III of Syria, who ruled between 731 and 741. The Vatican's long existence has given rise to its fair share of secrets, some of which will shock and horrify you. In this video, we will take a look at what the Vatican does not talk about and by all means tries to hide from us. One of the most scandalous cases talked about is the dealings of the Vatican Bank with Hitler's regime. The bank, also known as the Institute of Religious Affairs, IRD, has over the years carried out numerous transactions that have been called into question. The most controversial of them is the deal with Hitler. Historian Gerald Posner says that the Vatican received a substantial sum from the Führer each year for the so-called Kirchensteuer, that is, church tax. In order to prevent the transactions from being traced, many of them were passed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This counteracts the possibility of transfers being traced by other Western banks. It was at this point that the Institute of Religious Affairs became known as the largest offshore bank in the world. The Catholic Church benefited from the Institute of Religious Affairs and kept billions of dollars, never fully revealing to the public the scale of the transactions. We will probably never know how much money the church bank made from the Germans at that time. The Vatican is a state within a state in Italy, and accordingly, the bank does not provide information about bank accounts and the name of its depositors. It is said that it is no secret that they include names from the Italian mafia. This brings us to Roberto Calvi, better known as God's banker. Roberto took advantage of the sovereignty of the Vatican and its bank. He is the chairman of the Italian bank Banco Ambrosiano. Known for his connection to the Vatican, he earned the nickname God's banker. In fact, the Institute of Religious Affairs is its largest shareholder. During its time as an administrator, Calvi transferred bank and Vatican accounts to illegal offshore accounts, from which the Institute for Religious Affairs acquired a significant stake. In 1982, the authorities discovered discrepancies in Ambrosiano's finances. Calvi was fired, and a day later was found hanging under mysterious circumstances under London's Blackfriars Bridge. The investigation excludes a version that the banker took his own life. The bank subsequently went bankrupt due to huge debts to foreign banks and to the Vatican. As a result of Calvi's management, his bank's coffers are missing about $1.5 billion. The Vatican never admitted any wrongdoing and simply paid 214 million euros as part of a settlement. Another little known fact is that the Vatican has evaded taxes for about 13 billion euros. The church enjoys tax relief for its non-commercial properties that house chapels. Using this loophole in the law, between 2006 and 2011, the Vatican deliberately managed to save itself 4 billion euros in taxes. However, the Court of the European Union ruled that this was done completely against the law. Thus, the church was sentenced to pay 4 billion euros in tax. Calculations have been made that, taking into account the hidden taxes since 1992, the amount will most likely exceed 13 billion euros. Secret course of conscience. In the Vatican, there's a secret court for sins based on conscience. The bishops involved in these processes are also known as the Tribunal of Conscience. Established by Pope Alexander in 1179, this tribunal was successfully kept secret from the public until 2009. Sins dealt with by the court range from spitting or defiling a communion wafer to breaking a vow of celibacy by the priests. Sinners seeking forgiveness wrote a petition to the Holy See. They used pseudonyms to protect their identities. The tribunal sits on the matter, and decision-making is solely within the authority of the chief penitentiary. If he has any doubts, Then he refers the matter to the Pope. By the 18th century, brutal crimes such as rape and murder were also dealt with by the tribunal. The Vatican puts a deceased person on trial. One of the hidden and shameful secrets of the Vatican is that the Catholic Church has put a dead pope on trial. This happened way back in 897. Then, a posthumous trial was held against Pope Formus. Pope Stephen VI files a lawsuit against a man who has been dead for 7 months. But the most scandalous part of this story is yet to come. Pope Formus was accused of an illegitimate papacy. The body of the deceased was exhumed, dressed in papal robes, and brought to the papal court for the reading of the sentence. The late pope was found guilty, and his papacy was declared invalid. The Vatican's late chief exorcist performed over 160,000 exorcisms during his tenure. One of the things the Vatican certainly doesn't want us to know about is the numerous exorcism rituals the Church has been performing. Not only that, but they are said to be carried out to this day. The late chief exorcist of the Vatican, Father Gabriel Amort, faithfully served the Church for over 60 years. During his lifetime, he shared that he performed tens of thousands of exorcism rituals. Amort also says that the popes also performed exorcisms. He states that in 2009, Benedict XIV exorcised Satan from 2 boys, and in 2000, Pope John Paul II fought fiercely to exorcise a demon from a woman, but failed. Father Amort later claimed to have witnessed the possessed woman crawling up the walls like a spider. Who helped the people of Hitler's regime to escape from Europe after 1945? As we already understood, the Vatican and Hitler's regime have their history. There's a lot of talk about the fact that after the Second World War, Europe became a not friendly place for the people of this regime, and many of them fled to South American countries. Fleeing Germans occupying positions in the state prior to 1945 used a route known as the Rat Line, or translated as the Road of the Rats. The Vatican knowingly supported thousands of thugs from Hitler's ranks who escaped after the end of the war in 1945. Along this rat road, they passed through Italy to South America. With the help of the Church, one of the biggest war criminals, Franz Stangl, escapes from prison in Linz. The former commandant of the camps, Sobibor, and Treblinka, is responsible for the liquidation of nearly 1 million people. Stangl across Austria and reaches Italy. His target is Rome, where the Vatican is located. "You must be Franz Stangl. I was expecting you." With these words, the Roman bishop Alois Hudal greeted him, who also supplied him with false documents. With them, Stangl left for Syria, where he waits for his family. In 1951, he left Damascus for Brazil. The man responsible for one of the most gruesome death camps spent years working for Volkswagen near Sao Paulo. Gerald Steinacher, a researcher from Harvard, expresses a position that the help of the Vatican is based on the factor of the revival of European Christianity and the fear of the Soviet Union. The Vatican was behind the creation of false identities for many German fugitives. The Church refuses to comment on this matter to this day. The Secret Archives of the Vatican, the Vatican. Archives, also called the Secret Archives of the Vatican, are associated with many mysteries and speculations. The archive contains documents that the Church has been collecting for centuries. Most of them are accessible to the public under special conditions. However, no one knows exactly what is in the kilometer-long repository located under the Vatican. A detailed video about this secret archive and the mysteries in which it is shrouded can be found in our channel. Sometimes, however, things get so entangled that they cannot be covered. With the development of technology and the rapid spread of information, blunders are increasingly difficult to cover up. Just 2 to 3 years ago, we witnessed revelations of brutal fraud, corruption, extortion, and money laundering involving 10 Vatican officials, including a cardinal. Fraud, corruption, extortion, and money laundering. They are on trial and charged with a myriad of crimes. Nothing like this has ever happened in the entire history of the Holy See, Deutsche Welle reported. A rotten, greedy system, This is how the Vatican investigators defined the machinations of the accused, who for years benefited from the finances of the Catholic Church, bypassing all control mechanisms. The charges included a deal for a luxury property in London's prestigious Chelsea district, worth several hundred million euros, which should actually have gone to charity, financial fraud, extortion, corruption, money laundering, and abuse of office, informs Süddeutsche Zeitung, ZC. The Vatican says it had no idea that those involved had been diverting funds to their own pockets for so long. For the first time in the history of the Holy See, the Cardinal stands before the court. This is then 73-year-old Angelo Becciu, who from 2011 to 2018 was Deputy Secretary of State for General Affairs, and then rose to Cardinal and Prefect of the Congregation. The suspicions are that Becciu saw to it that his three brothers received funds and lucrative orders from the Vatican. One of them owns a brewery that was financed under the scheme. In the course of the investigation, the traces lead to a large amount of money transferred to the account of 40-year-old Cecilia Marogna, who, like Becciu, is from Sardinia. The Italian media dubbed her the Lady of the Cardinal. At least 575,000 euros were transferred to her account in Slovenia, most of which the lady spent on designer clothes and expensive fashion accessories. The former head of the financial supervision of the Vatican, the Swiss lawyer René Brudhart, also testified before the court.
The Central Intelligence Agency of the United States is one of the most secretive agencies in the world. Since its founding in 1947, various theories put forth by journalists, investigators, and alternative thinkers claiming that the CIA has been involved in withholding valuable information on subjects such as our ancient past. While some of these accusations have been proven, such as their hand in bringing various Nazi scientists to the U.S. after World War II, others, which suggest they are involved in hiding an ancient civilization that once existed in Egypt, are yet to be proven. But is there really any evidence to suggest the CIA are withholding information that would prove an ancient civilization once existed in Egypt's Sahara Desert? Let's find out. For centuries, if not millennia, scholars and researchers from around the world have suggested there could have once been an advanced ancient civilization that existed on Earth. This said civilization was destroyed in a great cataclysm over 10,000 years ago. Yet the remains of their grandeur can still be found in places such as Egypt and Peru today. Plato, the famous Greek philosopher, was one scholar to write about such a civilization. Plato was told about an ancient seafaring civilization that once existed before a major cataclysm sank many of their seaside cities, including their capital. The story was passed on to Plato by his grandfather, who in turn had heard it from the great Greek statesman Solon. Solon in turn heard the legend from a priest when he traveled to Egypt during his lifetime. Plato eventually wrote down the story in his work Timaeus, which he published in 360 BCE and called this civilization Atlantis. But is there a possibility that this once great capital existed? Well, Plato shares some fascinating information about the layout of the capital city of Atlantis. The story details how one of the major cities of this advanced Atlantean civilization was made up of a large concretic circles, yet was eventually sunk beneath the waters when a major cataclysm caused huge floods all around the world. Poseidon carved the mountain, where his love dwelt, into a palace and enclosed it, were 3 circular moats of increasing width, varying from 1 to 3 stadia and separated by rings of land, proportionally in size. The Atlanteans then built bridges northward from the mountain, making a route to the rest of the island. They dug a great canal to the sea, and alongside the bridges carved tunnels into the rocks so that ships could pass into the city and around the mountains. Yet Plato goes on to state that their great civilization would be turned to dust following a great cataclysmic event. But what does all this have to do with an American intelligence agency? Well, various researchers and independent journalists have claimed that for the last 50 years, the CIA has known about the existence of a once great civilization that existed in the Sahara Desert. But in order to see the connection for ourselves, we'll have to go back to the late 60s during an era when the CIA were involved in a secret operation called Project Magnet. In this secretive project, the CIA attempted to map gravitational and magnetic anomalies all across the northern region of Africa. As part of the project, the CIA conducted various aerial reconnaissance missions in the Sahara Desert and became increasingly interested in an unusual geological formation called the Richat structure. What's fascinating about the particular geological formation, also known as the Eye of Sahara, is its connection to the fabled ancient lost capital of the Atlantean civilization. Various geologists and researchers have studied the structure over the past few decades, yet none can explain how such an unusual formation could have formed naturally at the western edge of the Sahara Desert. However, to this day, the CIA claimed that no anomalies were found during the research they conducted at the site, and that the structure was nothing more than a natural feat of nature. Despite these claims, the CIA is still withholding the results of their surveys from the public. This has led to backlash from various scholars and independent researchers who claim that the intelligence agency is hiding information that could change the way we look at the history in the region. While some theories suggest this was the capital of Atlantis, others have gone as far as to say that the Eye of Sahara is evidence of an unknown advanced civilization, one that may be extraterrestrial in origin. Yet more simplistic theories have been put forth that imply volcanic activity or a meteor were responsible for the formation of the Eye of the Sahara. But is there any concrete evidence to suggest it could be the home of an ancient civilization? Ancient evidence that suggests Atlantis was in Africa? The Eye of the Sahara has been hiding in plain sight on the borders of the desert town of Odense, Mauritania, for many millennia. It was first discovered in 1965, thanks to pictures taken from NASA's Gemini 4 mission. Fast forwards to a few decades, and the site has become one of the most frequently visited sites in the region by researchers looking to uncover the mystery of the site. The Eye of the Sahara has a diameter of approximately 50 kilometers and is clearly divided into numerous concrete circles, bearing and striking similarity to the major city described in Plato's work. These rings look to be perfectly shaped from above, made up of rocks such as sandstone. While other aspects of the site bear a great similarity to what Plato wrote about the Atlantean capital, it's difficult to say for sure whether or not this is the lost city. Yet the striking coincidence may give us enough evidence to suggest this unusual structure in Western Sahara was, in fact, an ancient city of the Atlantean civilization. According to Plato, the island on which Atlantis was situated was enormous in size, similar to modern-day Iceland. The city itself was made up of concentric rings, with the major temple in the center dedicated to the city's founder, Poseidon, and his wife, Cleito. Plato also records that a vast array of mountains surrounding the Atlantean capital, and this is exactly what we find at the Eye of the Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara details. The oldest of the rings has been estimated at around 600 million years old, and the area's locals considered the structure a divine manifestation, calling it the Eye of God. While some believe that the Eye of the Sahara was the product of an ancient civilization, others believe the forces of nature made it. Among the scientific community, there are three major theories behind its construction. The first theory suggests that the Eye of the Sahara was formed when a meteorite smashed into the desert. However, this tends to be ruled out as the formation is almost completely flat, and generally, you would find some kind of deep crater at the site of a meteorite impact. On top of this, there are no signs of the minerals that are releasing in this high-speed collision. The second theory suggests that the Eye of the Sahara was formed over 100 million years ago when Pangaea, a supercontinent that connected much of Earth into one landmass, began to break apart. During this process, scientists have suggested that molten rock rose due to the shifting of tectonic plates, and this was responsible for the formation of the structure. Yet this theory can also be refuted, as no volcanic rocks can be found here. The third theory is the most outlandish. It claims that the Eye of the Sahara was once the capital city of the Atlantean civilization, a culture known for its advancements in technology and seafaring. 50 years after the initial CIA research was done on the site, a small amount of the classified information was released and made accessible to the public. Yet only one page was released, and it contained only a few sentences. This again makes us question why the CIA is going to such a great lengths to hide their research on the Eye of the Sahara. On top of this, the CIA has classified a book written by former employee known as Chan Thomas. The book was titled The Adam and Eve Story and contained information on the history of cataclysms that have occurred on Earth's past. Thomas claims that he received much of the research for the book from his years working at the CIA, and goes on to write about major floods that have occurred in Earth's past. He claims that one such flood destroyed a huge city that once existed in the western portion of the Sahara Desert. Could this cataclysm have brought on the Great Flood, which, according to Plato, sank the fabled city of Atlantis? Insider information from the CIA. If we compare the work of Chan Thomas, who speaks of a cataclysm that resulted in the destruction of a great civilization in the Sahara, we see clear parallels between the story and that of Plato's Atlantis story. Thomas claims that the major cataclysm that led to the flood of the Sahara occurred over 11,000 years ago. This date precisely matches that given by Plato, who claims Solomon was told by the Egyptian priests that Atlantis sank 9,000 years before him, which include the 2,000 years since Plato's passing makes 11,000 years. On top of this, modern researchers such as Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson have used the works of various reputable scientists to suggest that during the earlier period, over 11,000 years ago, a major cataclysm did, in fact, cause major floods across the world, and this would have certainly put much of the Sahara Desert underwater. Is this what the CIA found during their initial investigation all those years ago? Were they aware of the major cataclysm that sunk the city of Atlantis and caused massive destruction around the world, ultimately ridding the world of evidence that various ancient civilizations once existed? And is the CIA withholding this information from humanity? Because if it was to be released, archaeologists and researchers would have to rewrite a vast portion of our ancient history? No longer would it seem that our evolution was a linear line of gradual increase. Instead, we would have to recognize that many of our ancient ancestors were incredibly advanced in their own ways. What do you think? Is the CIA really hiding information that could prove the city of Atlantis once existed in the western portion of the Sahara?